So how do you cut and seam pattern carpet in an angled doorway? In this video, I'm going to walk you through it. So what's good? It's Carpet Mike here from CarpetExpertBlueprint.com, bringing you the tips and tricks to be more successful in the carpet and flooring industry. But check this out here. We have a pattern carpet. Now, as far as pattern goes, this is probably the easiest type of pattern to start out with and figure it out. It's just straight lines. Every third line, I think it is, changes color. So you just got to line those up. Pretty easy to do. This is nothing fancy at all, but if you're a DIY person or a newer installer, you'll be good to go with this. Now, the key is, first things first, getting the lines straight. Once they're straight, just line up the color scheme on them, and once you know you're good with that, we need to cut and seam this thing. So I went ahead and threw a nice clean edge on the first piece, and you see me trace that piece there with my knife, just cutting little slits in it to go ahead and generate a template that I could trace these slits on. Now, I got a little bit of experience under my belt, but if you're new to this or still, getting your feet wet in the game, use a straight edge on it. It'll make your life a lot easier. Once you get your skill set down, you can just take your knife and lob that stuff off. You'll be good to go. The other key thing you got to make sure you do is have a sharp blade. A dull blade will make this seam look horrific. So if you got a fresh blade in there, don't be afraid to change it in between cuts and everything, whatever it takes, because if you don't, you can get these little strings and threads popping through, and it's hard to not only seal those, but to go ahead and make them invisible on the seam there. So now we're going to go ahead and line it up and see how we did. And don't worry about any tiny bubbles that you may have. Be more concerned about gaps, because we still have to stretch all this in after we burn it. So we got everything good to go, lining up. Let's make sure we're good. We're going to shave just a little bit off right here. And this is what I'm talking about with a sharp blade. You are not going to shave a little thread off with a dull blade. So you definitely got to make sure it's sharp and make sure it's lined up. Are we looking good? We are good. Next, we're going to go ahead and get our seam tape here. Just unroll a hefty amount for that seam, and at each end of the seam, I want you to roll that tape under like I'm doing here. We're going to tuck it under the carpet, butt it right up against the door jamb. The reason we're rolling it under like that is it's going to make the tape pop up just a little bit on the tack strip, and it'll give it a more even burn with the seam iron. If you don't roll it under, it dips down a little bit, and the first few inches typically don't burn really nice on the seam. So you want to make sure you handle that there. Next, we're going to take the seam iron, we're going to put it into place and get this thing into action here. So when burning the seam, if you're new to the game, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 on the heat dial. And when you have that there, if you're new, you probably want to set it about 2.5 and burn it real slow. You get a little experience under your belt. Just go ahead and set that bad boy to 4, but make sure you stay on top of it. You don't want to overheat it and not pay attention to it, because if you do, it could cause the seam to buckle and just warp and all things bad. So let the seam iron sit in place when cooking on for about 8 to 10 seconds. Slide it an iron's length forward, put that part of the seam together, blend it in. If there's any strings, tuck it down into the seam, and go ahead and tuck the end there so everything holds on nice and tight for you. Now, once that thing has been sitting for another 8 to 10 seconds on the next spot, we're going to slide it an iron's length forward again. Everything good there. We're going to put together the next part of the seam and then finalize the whole deal here in the end. Now, a couple other things to keep in mind. Once you're done burning the seam, give it a good 10-15 minutes, somewhere in there. Let it cool down, dry thoroughly. That way you know it's cured. When you blast it on with that stretch there, you know it's not going to come apart on you. If you kick it too soon, you'll kick all your hard work apart, and you got to go back to square one, and that is no fun. So we're just going to go ahead and blend that in. Take our time, and bam, tuck in the ends there. And like I said, just let it set for a good 10 to 15 minutes. Start stretching it in, and you're good to go. Feel free to drop any comments down below, any questions about the flooring industry, and I will create follow-up videos answering your questions for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you on the next video.